Hello everybody, and welcome to the first episode of the official podcast of the Cheerful Hamlets Student Theatre. My name is Helena, and I will be your host today. My guests today are
Kuba
and
Hela.
In today's episode, I wanted to concentrate on directing, and since both of you have directed more than one play, I thought that I would take advantage of that and ask you some questions. But maybe let's start from introducing ourselves. If you, Hela, could tell us who are you, what are you doing in your life right now, and how did you join Hamlet?
Okay, my name is Hela. I joined the
You could start with
Hamlets.
your last name, because actually we didn't... I don't know if people... everybody knows who are we.
Yeah, I'm Helena and this is Hela. That's...
Yeah, that is a distinction. So I'm Hela Teleżyńska. I joined the Hamlets when I was in my first year of my BA at English Studies. And so that was a long time ago. And I finished a BA in English Studies and in Classics, and now I'm hopefully finishing my Master's in English Studies and Classics as well.
Great. And Kuba, you?
I'm Kuba Kądzielski, and it was the same for me. I mean, I joined Hamlets in my first year in BA. It was 6 years ago. And then I finished my BA in English Linguistics. Now I'm doing my Master's in English Linguistics. Kind of still struggling with a BA from philosophy, but it's on its way.
You're not doing your Master's in Linguistics.
No, I mean it's English Studies, it's English Studies, yeah. So I'm doing my MA in Shakespeare's dramas. BA as well. But yeah, 6 years in Hamlet's, still going.
Great. Okay. So, during your time in Cheerful Hamlets, you not only acted, but you also directed. And if I could ask you, which one do you prefer, directing or acting? And if you could tell us why.
Directing. Acting is great, and I loved acting. Still love acting. For the longest time, I thought I was going to be an actor. I prepared myself for it, went to every imaginable course in Warsaw, in acting courses. But then when we directed our first play in the Cheerful Hamlets, I realized that the influence that you have on the final product is, it's immense when you're a director. And I had this feeling that, all of those hours spent studying English, studying Shakespeare, studying philosophy, all of this actually pays off if I have, the say, how is it going to look in the end? So in the end, it's directing.
Yeah, I'd say it's directing for me as well, although maybe for different reasons than Kuba, but I like acting as well, but I really don't feel that I'm very much good at it, and I get terrible stage fright. So I really like directing because you put everything you can into it just up until the moment of the opening night, and then you stay
chill.
Then you stay backstage, or you do the lights or the music or anything, but you're not actually on stage, so you're sort of safe for that moment.
That's good that you mentioned that, because there is a process that is involved in directing, which may be a little bit different in our group than it is maybe in more mainstream group and mainstream theater, because in Cheerful Hamlets the director is basically everything, a stage management, everything. So if you could tell us a little bit about how the directing process looked for you in Cheerful Hamlets from the beginning till the final moments of the premiere.
I think in order to answer that question, we should say a couple of things about the plays that we did direct, because the process looked differently in different cases. So we, together with Kuba, we directed first With Surrender, which was a comedy, and then Richard III, which is a drama.
Yeah.
And I also directed Freshwater. That was the first thing that I ever did. So I guess With Surrender and Richard were two different ends of a spectrum. With Sweet Surrender, we first of all, in the Hamlets, as our listeners may not know, we choose the play we're going to work on democratically via vote. So when we voted on To Surrender, and we voted also that we would be directing it, we just sort of went on with the text, doing everything as we went, so to say. Whereas with Richard, obviously, there was a lot of more interpretation and a lot of more work to be done before we even started the first rehearsal. So with Richard, we first had a coherent interpretation in mind. We also had a couple of meetings with all the group where we just worked on the text, and only then did we start rehearsing. So I guess those were different processes.
Definitely. To answer a question more directly, well, definitely you begin with the text, with the idea of how is it going to look, how do you want it, is it supposed to be very faithful to the text, or do you want to mix something up? So, for example, with Richard, the big question was, do we do this more contemporaneously, I guess, and if so, do we want what kind of do we do this also with the language, with the text? What kind of costumes we want people to wear, and so on and so on. So, you set everything, the ground up for everything. You need to have it, thought through, the casting, who plays who, how is it going to be feasible. And then, you start your rehearsals. And, all the time you're managing where are you going to stage it, when is it feasible to stage it, what happens if something happens, because maybe somebody tells you, listen, I'm not really available in July. I know you wanted to do this in July, so you start thinking, maybe if the person falls through, what do we do? You start working on music, on lights and posters and everything that is around this. So like you said, yes, the Cheerful Hamlets is kind of this experience of a small theater when you as a director, even though you often have a second person, because that's kind of a system that we worked out, you still have to manage a lot of things around the play. Even, to the last moment that it is finished, we try to record our plays as well. So you need to make sure that somebody records this, both, video and audio, and then puts it together, and then it goes online with the proper cast and so on and so on.
Yeah, but I also wanted to add, and I guess that's going to be a motive that will come up throughout the interview, is that one of the things that I love about the Cheerful Hamlets is that it really is collective work, and no matter how much we prepare beforehand, let's say with Richard, with interpretation and everything, there is so much that happens just during rehearsals that somebody will come up with the idea that, hey, maybe I can play this scene that way, and then you talk about it and you work it out together, and I think that's really amazing. So as much as the director does everything, as in the director is also the stage manager, the designer in a way, of course we do, well, sometimes we do the props ourselves and so on, but also in a sense everybody is also a director, because everybody has a voice in how the end product is going to look like.
And saying that, you have co-directed 2 plays, Sweet Surrender and Richard III, which also brings interesting situations, since you are 2 people with 2 different looks on maybe different interpretations and so on. And could you tell me how did it work out for you? Were there any arguments? How do you solve situations where you have opposing views? Give me some drama, spicy drama.
Well, I don't think it was much drama, actually, because we kind of had this unspoken agreement that one of us is more of a leading director and the other one is more of a supporting one, this division of labor came pretty naturally to us. But of course, it's always difficult, because I remember we clashed a little bit over casting, who's gonna play who. But we were just sitting down, drinking beer, smoking cigarettes.
In Parana.
In Parana. So
R.I.P.
it wasn't, we didn't throw chairs around, but
At this time.
yeah, at this time. But it's always difficult. The other person can always fall through. We had this situation making Sweet Surrender when I got super drunk the night before opening night. Because we had the general rehearsal and I was so stressed that everything should be imperfect, and when I went to the bar afterwards I got shit-faced. I barely got home. I slept in my coat. I dropped my phone in the toilet. And I woke up hangover, insanely hangover. And when I finally got to the theater, I was a wreck of a human being with my wonderful co-director waiting there for me to get on with the play. So yeah, it's always...
You slept on the couch.
Yeah, I slept a lot during that day.
Yeah.
I whenever I
Remember
could.
that.
Yeah, but first of all, let me say this is not how we usually operate. We never drink alcohol, whether before the play or after the play. We never do that. No.
We are sober.
And going back to the co-directing, well, I think. Well, the Sweet Surrender was a bit by chance. I don't know why it was exactly the two of us who were chosen to direct it. I guess
I
we just
remember
had
I
the
wanted
time
to do it,
thing.
and I asked you because I knew that you would do it
But then,
well with me.
Yeah, for me at least, I hope for you as well, working together in Sweet Surrender was such a pleasure that when I wanted to do Richard, there was no doubt in my mind that Kuba was the person to turn to.
Yeah.
And I think it's like Kuba said, the most important, obviously, you will have some clashes, but they're not really clashes. It's more like you have somebody to hold you accountable to your views. You have somebody who will challenge your interpretation, who will think up another way of doing a scene, and you can then discuss whether it's better or worse. So I think that's good. And then also you have unfailing support of the other person. And when things go bad, and there will be 1,000 things that will go bad during the course of preparing a play, you have somebody to help you, and equally importantly, you will have somebody to hear you moan about the play for hours and hours. So yeah.
And with the interesting situation where sometimes you're an actor, sometimes you're a director in Cheerful Hamlets, do you feel like do you think that it is an interesting or like a problem for you guys when you were sometimes the one responsible for the interpretation of the play, and sometimes you're the one who's supposed to take on the someone else's interpretation? And do you feel like sometimes, since you had the directing experience, you automatically want to put your own interpretation in someone else's play later on when you do someone else's project?
Okay, for me, no, not really. I mean, going back to what I said about Cheerful Hamlets being collective effort, I know that if I'm playing a character and I think that I want to do something because it will be better, I can voice that opinion. And I can talk to the director, whoever he or she is at the moment, why I think that would be better. But if they say no and explain it and give their reasons and I find them satisfactory, then I will. Even if I don't, I absolutely understand that it's their call at that moment. So I'm not tempted to in any way subvert that.
Yeah, I mean that's a good rule that the director has the final say no matter what, because we are not a professional theater, and let me rephrase that. We're not a traditional theater where a director has really strong influence over everything that happens. He's akin to a god in the working space, and so there whatever the director says goes. Here it's not the same, but strictly in terms of the amount of time and work that a director puts into the work. It's just, it's his right to have the last say. But, you know, me personally, I have this feeling that, you know, I always have an idea, you know, to put out there, and I can be a bit of an overbearing actor who wants to direct himself. While at the same time, when I'm playing in a play that I'm directing, I feel like I could get more direction, and I could, you know, I would like for someone to direct me a little bit more. You know, I had this with Richard III. Even though, you know, my roles were small, I had a feeling like, you know, if I was only an actor, I could definitely squeeze them more.
I feel like sometimes when I'm acting and I see that I have some kind of idea or I have some kind of comments about someone else's acting, and I want to tell that to the director, but I feel like I'm annoying and I'm just coming there and trying to put this on them. But I think it's a good solution to, if you have an idea, to try and come and say, hey, I got this idea, or I have this thing, because sometimes, you know, as you said, we are collective. We are have a
We are collective.
We have a
no personal property.
so on, yeah. Yeah, our small commune. That we have very often different roles, and it's not like someone is much, I guess, always has the say, right? So I think that it's a good thing to come and say, but it still feels sometimes as if you're the annoying person who just doesn't know to stand in their line.
But I think the end, you know, result is totally worth it, even if you come up as an annoying person, because it happens. I mean, when you're directing, it's so much emotions and energy going around. I definitely get this, and I can be pretty nasty at times, but you know, especially when I right now, you know, I'm kind of exiting university, going around different companies, working here, working there, you know, people are so nice and so careful not to step on each other's toes. And, you know, while you're directing, well, when you're making theater, you know, the clashes are just so much more frequent.
Saying that, is it a problem to direct in a group that knows each other so well? And to be the one to say, okay, you get this role over the other person, and and what other problems might come with, like, directing people who actually are also in some ways friends? So not only it's that they are, it's
in
not
every way,
but you know, like, everyone is differently, you know, not naturally there are people who gravitate towards each other more than to the other people, but all in all, we know each other, and we don't work together. Everyone does it from passion, but with that comes some I think some maybe interesting situations. So, like,
well, yeah, definitely. There's two sides to that coin, that we are all friends, and the one side is obviously that it's wonderful to work with a group of friends, and that when you go to the Friday rehearsal, you're happy not just because you're going to do theatre, but you're happy because you're going to see so many people that you like, and then you're going to go grab a beer and socialise, and it's always just a wonderful space to be in with all the other Hamlets. And of course, the other side of that coin is, as you said, that sometimes personal matters may interfere with, let's say, professional matters or theatrical matters. So yeah, it does happen sometimes, but I think we are, overall rather grown up about it, I'm gonna say. Like, even if some drama arises, it is quickly, the fire is quickly put out.
Definitely. Although it is a bit of a glee club. I mean, we have this thing, like, you know, as in, you know, in every artistic community, there's like dramas and relationships which come and go, and it takes its toll. But I definitely agree with Hela. You know, at the end of the day, all of those things they end up usually as funny anecdotes.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
And in general, do you think that that the effort of the director is overlooked later on? In general, not only in Cheerful Hamlets, but like, do we concentrate more on the actors and so on, and you don't see the work that it was put in from the perspective of the director?
Well, the question is rather broad, right? Because if you mean generally, as in theatre or cinema in Poland and in the world, then obviously that's a big question. I'm inclined to disagree. I think, well, first of all, it depends on what kind of viewer you are, right? Because whether you are more inclined to look at the acting and focus on the acting and appreciate that, or whether you're more inclined to think about all the decisions that have led to this situation and think about directing and the person of the director and how that person influences the play. So I guess in the end, it's in the eye of the spectator. And in the Cheerful Hamlets, and also one more thing, like I think to back up my claim that it's not so that directors are overlooked. No matter how good an actor you are not. Like, you can be a household name, but in a different way. You can be a star, you can act marvelously, but I think, especially in Poland, like, well, maybe not, but Poland is a case in point, where you have, a couple of directors who are just, you hear the name and you know exactly what type of theatre it is. They may have their own theatres. They are super famous for a kind of work that they do, so I don't think that actors are overlooked. And in the Hamlets, again, it's a super collective process, as I said. I think there are a lot of... Staging a play takes the cooperation of really a lot of people. And it's not... The director, sure, does a lot, but there's also people who do the scenography, the people who do the posters and everything. We try never to overlook anybody and always thank them whenever we stage something and in other ways and so on. But I wouldn't say that the director is the most overlooked, and I think I wouldn't even say that the director is overlooked at all.
No, I think in Cheerful Hamlets the directors are not overlooked. They definitely they are often very much emphasized, even more than actors. But in let's say outside world, I mean, my head is a bit more in cinema than theater, where the actors are often stars. They're the frontmen. They usually get, they get the audience for a given movie. If you get Leonardo DiCaprio, the studio has very very accurate, solid data to know how many people will come to see Leo DiCaprio. While in terms of directors, unless you are Quentin Tarantino or, I don't know, Steven Spielberg, you are less of a name usually. You're a bit less famous, maybe more famous in some other groups, but, even
not in the mainstream as much.
Definitely for the let's say quote unquote common man, an actor is a more visible person because you actually get to see them.
Yeah.
When you get out of the cinema, you remember the face.
They're on the posters.
Yeah, they're on the posters. Yeah. You remember the face rather than think, who actually created this.
And coming more to your personal experience, what is like one thing with about directing that you didn't expect before you started doing it? Do you have any? If some good things, some bad things, if they were bad, how did you deal with it?
Well, like I said, there's literally 1,000 things will go wrong while you're preparing a play, and so even if you're prepared that 1,000 things will go wrong, you are never really prepared for exactly how and when the world will come tumbling down, and you will just find yourself wondering whether this was a good idea in the first place or not. But having said that, I think the thing I didn't expect, even though I thought about it, and even though actually it happens every time we stage anything, but it still has the power to surprise me every time, is just how incredibly it is worth it, and how incredibly what happens when we stage something, and in general, that the Cheerful Hamlets are so much more than the sum of the parts, right? That what happens when we all come together, and after so much work, so much individual work had been put into this project, the moment when it all comes together, something magical happens, and it's so much bigger than all the small things that have come together on the way, and it's so much bigger than all the things that went wrong on the way. So for me, that's always an a bit expected surprise, so to say, but it just blows my mind every time we stage something how incredible it is.
To answer that maybe a little bit more down to earth, in general, I was surprised by the amount of clerical work that you have to do around directing a play. Maybe, you know, a lot of that is taken off your back when you have a big theater or a big film group. But we definitely had some fights, you know, in terms of getting a contract for this, or maybe getting stage rights, and so on and so on. I remember being very much surprised with the amount of intellectual work we had to do, or rather Hela put me through when it came to Richard III. I can't remember, you know, even if when writing a thesis or dissertation, you know, you don't get to know the play so intimately as when you have to read it 1,000 times and do it over and over again. But I definitely agree with Hela. This thing that, you know, there wasn't anything before, and then you came with your ideas, which were purely in your head. It was figments of your imagination, and at the end of the day, they are actually there for everybody to be seen. That's something very surprising, you know. You don't really, you don't expect how good it feels.
Having said that, like at the end, do you have anything that you remember that was like the funniest thing that happened during the directing, and some kind of anecdote that would be
well,
nice.
I already told to one when I get super drunk, and to fill in on that story, we had a lot to do that day, and I remember working with power tools.
Don't. We abide by all the rules of health and safety as laid out by the University of Warsaw, and we never let a hangover man touch any tools.
You know, tuning into that note, I also remember when we were doing Richard III, there was a lot of, if you don't know the play, a lot of people kill a lot of people in it, and we had you know certain props, you know, to do it. But before we had the props, I remember when we actually had like blunt knives.
Oh my god!
You know, like they were blunt. You couldn't really hurt anybody with it. But, you know, during the whole turmoil on stage, we had a little bit of an accident. And I remember my friend, I was like, nothing's gonna happen. Arthur, who was in that scene, he was also, nothing's gonna happen.
And I was panicking because I was the one who was supposed to stab Arthur. And I knew that this is not a good idea with this knife, because even though it was blunt, it had like the very end of it was extreme. It was sharp enough to hurt, and it was sharp enough to hurt. After like third time, I tried to stab him with the knife. I actually stabbed him with the knife, and it was. All the nightmares came true in this moment.
Yeah, we had a bit of a break there, but
So you would say, Hela, you already said that you think that it is worth it, that all the hard work that you put into it, all of the tears and sweat and blood as well, apparently, that you put into it.
Well, definitely, and I hope not just for me. I'm speaking not just as a director, but as a member of the Cheerful Hamlets. In general, it's the blood and sweat and tears of every member of the cast, right? Because of course, we talked about how the director works hard at interpretation and managing everything and so on. But then the work the actors go through with Richard, especially, like I was simply amazed at how. First of all, how well they manage the language, which is not easy, how beautifully they conveyed and comprehensively conveyed that language to the audience, and then simply just what they did. Like I was utterly in awe of our entire ensemble, how they pulled it off. So I hope that for all of them, as for us, this kind of project was in the end worth it.
Yeah. I mean, you know what's at stake, right? I mean, you kind of get a huge debt in advance of trust from the cast. You approach them with this idea, you pitch it to them, you know, they get excited, and you know, you get this pressure over your head that you have to deliver, so you work hard. And you know, in all the plays that I had the pleasure to direct or co-direct in Hamlets, or help out with directing in here and there, I never had a feeling that it wasn't worth it. But maybe it is because, you know, I always knew that if I'm not going to give 100% of myself, I will regret it. I owe it to the people to do it.
Yeah, but that's a good point that I think we could labor a little bit, is that everybody gives 100% if not more, and that you can also trust them to give the 100%. So when, for example, when I'm acting and I don't see often the entire result until the opening night or something, because you can't rehearse your scenes, you don't always see the entire thing. And then again, I'm blown away by the fact that, okay, I tried to give everything I could, and everybody has as well. And as a whole, it's just, I can see all the hard work that was put in, and it's amazing for me that you can trust everybody to give their very best out of sheer passion for theatre, because there's really nothing else.
The occasional pizza.
Yeah, the occasional pizza.
That we also pay for, right?
But we previously, you know, we pay it as how you call składka in English? Oh,
membership fee.
Membership fee. So you don't feel like it's coming out of your pocket.
Yeah. All right. Would you direct something in future? Would you like to?
Ooh. I'd love to,
No
but
spoilers.
we'll see. I think both Kuba and me are in rather old Hamlets, and it's time for us to get a move on and leave the stage for the younglings. But obviously, yeah, I'd love to, but also given the pandemic situation, it's so difficult to do anything live right now, so I don't know if it would be possible next year or no. And further than next year, will probably won't be.
Probably. We'll see, you know. But what Hela said, one of the great, also sad things about Hamlets is that you naturally move on after a while and give room to another group of people that comes. Because each year we accept new people, which is something, you know, not often happening in actual theaters. In traditional theaters, so you kind of have to give. Sorry, we are an actual theater. It sounds like we're just making this stuff up. I promise you, the Cheerful Hamlets exist actually. Yeah, but you have to give some space to other people. But you know, outside of Cheerful Hamlets, definitely, I would love to direct more in theater, in cinema, outside of cinema. Random groups of people, whenever I get the opportunity.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming and talking to me about directing. It was a pleasure to have you over here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, thanks.
Yes, and thank you for listening to us. If you want to listen to more episodes of the Hamlet Podcast, you can find us on YouTube and on Spotify. Follow the Cheerful Hamlets on Facebook and Instagram, and come back for a new episode in 2 weeks' time. Bye!
Bye!